Wow. Look at that. Look at those boys.
Hello, I'm Connie McCullough, and I'm excited to take you through my method for canning whole tomatoes today. We kick things off by giving them a good rinse in cold water. Then we carefully core and score each tomato before immersing them in hot water. Cut this off a little bit. We don't want that in our jar. Then we score it. We're going to put our jars in the hot water bath. First of all, we want to make sure that there are no chips or cracks around the rims, that there's no cracks around the bottom, and we want to be sure that our flats, when it gets hot, it'll seal down perfectly. We don't want any rust or corrosion on any of these. So, this is our water bath canner, but we're going to pre-use it to heat our jars and our flats and our rings. This pot we've put on earlier to heat it up, and once it starts to boil, we'll put our cored and scored tomatoes in here and let them blanch a little bit until the peels start to roll back on the tomato. Then we'll pull them out, put them in an ice bath, and get ready to put them in the hot jars. Very carefully place them in the water. Kind of see down in here how once they've started to blanch, how the skin of the tomato is starting to peel off. That's our goal. We don't want to cook them, but we want them to do that. We put them in an ice bath because we're not making sauce, we're making whole tomatoes here. The key to the canning these is everything is hot, everything is clean. The jars and everything go on towels so that you don't have a really cold surface. Put in a teaspoon of salt. Grab a knife. Peel these tomatoes. So I kind of smash them down. So I've pushed all these tomatoes down here. We've got a nice little headspace here, which we want to keep on all of our jars. The funnel works really great, especially if you're using smaller ones, but it'll help guide your tomatoes in there. This is going to make a beautiful, beautiful jar of tomatoes. I have a damp cloth. I want to be sure everything is clean. We don't have any spills or stirs on this. Then I'll do this. Take a skewer, and then I'll go around the jar. Make sure all the air bubbles are out. If you don't make sure the air bubbles are out, what's going to happen is you're going to eventually have some floating tomatoes, and you'll have a bunch of what I call the essence of tomato at the bottom. It doesn't matter if it's down there. It gets a little frustrating when you want to just look at a whole jar of tomatoes, but it's still good to eat, and it still works well in soups. Make sure you only have one flat. They do have a tendency to stick together. And you want to just finger tighten it, set it aside until you have 6 or 7 jars. The woody parts, unless they're really big and huge and look like a core, I just leave them because they'll cook down in your soups and your sauces. So we put our rack in. This is the same water bath that we use to heat up our jars. So we've got a rack, and it's well balanced, so you can put your jars in anywhere, and it's just have finger tightened the flats down. We haven't cranked the things down really super tight. We want the flat to sit kind of loosely on the top, but not enough that water will get up in there. Good. We want water over the top of our jars by at least an inch. 35 minutes. And when it goes off, our tomatoes will be done. Then we just wait for them to cool down. The ping is what I call the song that tells you what you've done is right. When you take the jars out of the water bath with the jar lifter, set them over here, then I'll cover them with a towel so they don't cool too fast. And then as they start to cool down and the flats start to suck down onto the brim of the jar, then it will ping. It'll make this nice little sound. And you'll know that you've got a good seal. Okay, so this is your flat. The flat has a little bit of a bubble in it. So when the flat cools down on the hot jar, this rubber will seal to the lid or to the rim, and this will ping down.
Yeah.
It'll make that ping sound. We've had our 35 minutes in the hot water bath. So we're going to take the lid off. Okay. Very carefully. The last thing we want to do is hit the bottom of these jars on the lid of the pan or on the rim of the pan.
It take for those to cool.
It takes, well, I'll leave them overnight.
How did you get into canning?
I got into canning when I was in my 20s. Moved to a farm ranch in Wyoming with my 2 young sons. And my great aunt Bo lived on the property before we bought it, and she was always regaling me with tales about how hard it was to garden because it was in Wyoming and we had heavy winters, and so she'd tell me tales about how she'd can this and she'd can that, and you know, every once in a while she'd just be really tired and she'd just be finishing the last jars, and she'd bang it on the rim of the pot, taking it out, and the bottom would fall out of the jar, and there'd be tomatoes all over the stove and the floor, and you know, so we had successes and failures, but everything was a memory when we went to when you went to the pantry to look and see what was going on. And flavors in January that you picked in August were, you know, they were just food for the soul. And so I wanted to do that.